Welcome in. We're going to do coffee with Kelsey. That's me. We're going to pull some cards, do some intuitive insight. If you have questions, you can ask. Our theme today is talking shit. I've been thinking about this or meditating on this for maybe the last 2 weeks. I've been wanting to do this topic. And I haven't been doing many of these this year so far. It's been an interesting year so far. So I guess we'll just kind of get into it, and I'll fill you in on, I guess, what brought me to this. One of the first things I have in mind, especially in trying to come up with like topics for discussion or like little snippets on this or whatever, as far as like the transformation guide goes, I've been working on the transformation guide for the last 10 years since I graduated from school. So for the last 10 years, I've been putting some really intense research and really heavy thought into this as a tool and a resource. And so as far as talking shit goes, I have some interesting thoughts, right? Because sorry, my chair's squeaky. Good morning. Welcome in. Let's say as somebody who has studied psychology for the last 20 years and somebody who has been in a number of art classes, especially painting classes, upper division college level painting classes, or just kind of any really in-depth art class, it's going to have you do a critique. And so from a behavioral background, looking at very specific patterns in things, recognizing patterns, addressing things as they are, instead of trying to sugarcoat things, being honest, being truthful. People perceive this to be a personal attack, or some people perceive this to be talking shit, right? If you're whatever. And I'm one of those where I'm not going to say anything behind your back that I want to say to your face. Take that phone call off. But it's interesting from a consultant's perspective, or from the sort of perspective where it's imperative that I'm honest and truthful. I'm navigating people's lives and their transformations, and that comes with a great degree. And that comes to how exposing corruption is our thing for my April initiative too. So there's something about in exposing things or about talking things, because people who are not receptive to critique or receptive to that level of feedback, they're going to jump into that defensive realm of, oh, you're just talking shit, and they're going to undermine you and try and take your power and whatnot. It's a cultural dynamic. I don't think this is something very specific to humans, so we're talking about cultural shifts. Justice comes up. I've got the Deviant Moon deck here. If you have questions, you can ask. You can put them down in the comment feed, and I'll do my best to keep track of it. But especially when it comes to transformation too, if you've been one way for so long, or engaging in certain patterns or things for a certain amount of time, people are going to expect certain things from you. So when you go to transform your life and you begin to do things differently, setting boundaries, no longer tolerating certain behaviors, people will jump into this realm of using words to, let's say, justify their belief patterns. And this is not condoning talking shit at all. This is talking about authenticity, vulnerability, and getting into that sort of mode and mentality. Right? Knight of Swords is coming up. Knight of Swords, Page of Wands. And so there's like something about battle mode. And I experienced this with a former employer of mine. And for me, as a consultant and like government rated, and my base level, my worth value is quite high. but I've had to, because of life circumstances and whatnot, settle for jobs that have underpaid me or undervalued me, or just to take on minimal jobs just to keep bills paid, which gets frustrating for me because I have this vast array of skills and knowledge and skill sets, and people tend to value you based on how much money they're attributing or whatever it is that they're investing, or they're going to try to somehow justify your worth and value based off of their, let's say, I don't want to call it an investment, because it's not. It's like some sort of financial contribution. Oh, if you do this for me, therefore you get this. And in doing the work that I do, I work a lot with grassroots arts organizations, beginners, people going through big changes in life, or people who want to kind of take one thing from another. I work with a lot of artists, galleries, so on and so forth, business planners. In the realm of the arts especially, there's just a lot of ego, sensitivities, let's call it mostly ego, or people trying to portray or project a certain idea of things, or I don't know, exploitation is coming to mind here as well, where we have these vulnerable, expressive beings who are putting their heart and their soul and their truth out there. They're being very, and this isn't always, but this is like a taking the risk to put yourself out there in order to try and get the bills paid or something. There are people who will take advantage of this, like, oh, I'm the one selling your stuff, or I'm the one representing you. And in gallery settings, it's interesting because the higher level and the higher quality of gallery and representation that you're at, the more of a percentage that they're going to take, like 40% on the high end. But we have a lot of these beginners out there who think, oh, I can do that, that's not hard work or whatever. They don't have experience within these fields, but they still want to take 40%. They're not showing up, they're not doing the work, they're not providing the level of services up to that, and it has an impact on the artists or the people being represented, the clientele, that sort of a thing. And in, let's say, this position of consultancy where people connect with me and reach out to me for all sorts of feedback, let's say in recognizing and supporting those who are being taken advantage of, those who are exploiting are going to be the first ones to say that you are talking shit, for calling out their bullshit. And these are people who aren't going to take accountability for their actions, and they're going to I've got Knight of Cups here too, and I've got this Knight of Swords here on this page, but I feel like these guys are going to turn the tables in such a way where it's more about making themselves look better, not so much about elevating other people for the benefit of their quality of life. And so people get sucked into these people-pleasing behaviors, or they get sucked into these dialogues of saying one thing to your face, or being nice and kind to your face because they're trying to avoid some sort of I don't want to call it a confrontation or a conflict, but they're trying to avoid seeing something within themselves that they've tried to repress for a long time. It creates this disharmony, or this emotional disharmony, or this emotional dysregulation. And so in terms of regulating the emotions, people aren't regulating their emotions through emotional intelligence. They end up regulating their emotions by trying to control the narrative of somebody else, or trying to control somebody else's lives, or like putting down other people to elevate themselves. And this is why I just don't like name calling. This is why I don't, people go to it quick. They'll just snap to it, and they'll get into these battles of like wit almost of who can put down or destroy the other person with words the fastest, or who can create this image and this narrative that other people. And it's just, it's completely dismissing this whatever, right? Because we've got us walking around like fucking ice here. It's a tricky cultural norm to have to navigate. And what it does, it instills, it's control. It's a control tactic, and it instills this level of fear in people where they're afraid of speaking their truth, or speaking out, or standing up against injustices. This is why in a lot of these like high profile like sexual assault cases, or even abuse cases, the person calling out the abuser is the one who ends up like in hot water, and the person who is doing the things is further enabled because they can pull this card of like, oh, so and so is just talking shit, or they're just trying to whatever, and it just creates these unhealthy power dynamics, right, where people are trying to leverage resources and things to control other people. And this control for other people is coming through, I don't know, Queen of Pentacles is here to, it's a form of regulating their emotion. There's like a sense of power, control, whatever that is in a lot of these dynamics, but it's people not being able to resolve their own emotional stuff because they bury it so deeply, and they create these narratives where my brain right now is automatically going to the difference of social norms between men and women, and like man babies. You know, no offense, I think this can play out in feminine energies, or in women as well, who take on these very masculine roles, or who try to avoid their emotional vulnerability and femininity. It's a similar dynamic. But if we're talking about a patriarchal system or whatever, it's more socially acceptable for a man to be able to throw a big fit, throw a tantrum, be emotive in such a way, and point whatever fingers, oh, so-and-so didn't do this for me, or so-and-so didn't appease me, and didn't, so-and-so did something that made me look bad. And that's catered to. We're like, oh, okay, man, we'll quell that. And oh, this woman, and she had emotions, or she didn't say something, or she didn't do something, and she's bad. Whereas for women can be a lot more catty and underhanded. They're, I think, ones that are more likely to be really nice to your face and try to be your friend and be all of that. And as soon as you walk into the room, they're like, oh my god, did you see what she was doing? Did you see what she was wearing? I can't believe her. Oh my god, she just thinks she's like this. Oh my god, she just told me all this personal information, and so here, let me give you the one, right? But then they'll still be nice to your face. It's just, it feels so immature. It just feels like this energy of like, I whatever, I got you down first before you got to me. And it's just so childish. It does nothing for us in the long run, right? Ace of Wands is coming up here. This is like nurturing mom babies, or just the enabling of it, or you know, these ideas of putting the emotional labor, holding somebody else responsible, making somebody else in a dynamic do all of the emotional labor because you want to play, or they want to play this card of like, well, I put the social norm, I do whatever, you know, just this is such a just a really gross energy to tap into, but it needs to be. Page of Swords is here. Like we really need to get a close look at why people are wielding these words in such a way, or why they're trying to project and deflect a lot of this. And again, this guy's coming back up. And it's just a means of trying to control other people for being controlled because somebody can't navigate their own emotional stuff or whatever, or like your discontent makes them uncomfortable because you're making them uncomfortable because you're expressing discontent. They're going to go into this place of like, oh, you're doing something bad and wrong, and they go into like this shithole. These are interesting. So we're talking about transformation. And so the thoughts, right, through a lot of this, and it's tragic, right? There's just these horrible, awful things that happen. Turning tragedy into beauty. That's the theme that popped up this morning. We're alchemizing, right? This is speaking of transformation and the tragedy, the shit, can be alchemized and turned into something beautiful. This is where like perspective comes into play. Detached compassion, being detached. People get so attached and invested into the way they think things are. Let's say control. They think they have control over something because they have the power, the authority to regulate or dictate another person's emotional affect based off say threat or coercive control or something. But the irony in it, because people won't see it. For example, as somebody who has been in therapy now, in and out of therapy since I was 14, we're talking over 20 years, like 25 years, and being a therapist and going through multiple types of therapy and going through all sorts of spiritual work and training, kundalini practices, art of living stuff. Like when it comes to doing the work and processing, I've been processing a lot, and I'm just at this point where I don't want to process anymore. I don't have anything else to process. So I'm at this point of taking action because I think it's important to get people to know how to process a lot of this. And I think a lot of what happens in this realm of talking shit is people want to avoid processing. That's pretty much what that goes into. Processing involves feeling, energy, loss of control, a lack of control, or this understanding that we are in flow and not in control. I have the flow book. Let's pull out something from flow. And I think it's important, right? So when people are in flow, and they want to control, they want to steer, they want to regulate where the water goes. They're doing something because they want to avoid something, or they're trying to uphold something. But again, like this whole idea is just like socially reinforced. But I don't know, but like presentation is everything, because here this woman is just berating this person, and this person berating that person, and the other person being like, oh, I'm not listening to it. And so this is also like kind of in the area of like, if you can't, or if they can't hold space for understanding And they're going to perceive everything that you're doing to be like nagging or talking shit. They're just going to tune it out and they're not going to listen to it anyway. Like Extinction Burst is coming to mind then too, because then it's like, well then what? Cause leave it to talk to them, and then you put them on extinction, and then they just like even more. Or if you don't feed into it, or you don't start, yeah, let's say feeding the narrative to uphold that ease of control, that part of it's gone. I opened it up to page 208, and the autotelic self. A summary. We'll go to these two paragraphs. The autotelic self is one that easily translates potential threats into enjoyable challenges. What's the function? What's the function of this person saying this thing? And getting to the heart of the function. Because if a person is saying something to you and you're assuming or implying that the function of that is like talking shit and undermining the opportunity to learn, grow, and evolve, you know what I'm saying? It's just like all these people want to avoid accountability, or it's like, the other part that I'm trying to understand and wrap my head around right now are people who talk shit and say really mean things, hurtful, harmful things. And then when you call them out on that, are like, well, whatever, and they don't want to be held accountable to it. What does matter? It's just words, you know, words can, like, why is it that some people don't feel that they need to be held accountable for the things that they've done? There's an antecedent, there's a behavior, and then there's a consequence. And if people aren't meeting a consequence to their shitty actions, they're going to keep perpetuating that, right? Okay, so we can take potential threats and this tragedy, and we can alchemize it and turn it into an enjoyable challenge, an opportunity to learn, grow, self-reflect, do better, be better, and therefore maintains its inner harmony. Oh, okay, so the story. I don't know where I was going with that. Sorry, I get kind of off topic in this space. Some of the most emotionally volatile people are the ones who portray themselves to have it all together on the outside. There's this facade or this image that they maintain that they are, say, cool, calm, collected, unemotional. I'm just positive and happy and I have it all. And a lot of these people use materialism to distract from or to avoid the emotional stuff. That's why people go shopping when they feel bad or whatever. Oh, if I have more, then I'm worth more. If I, you know, my emotions don't matter so long as I have the big shiny super so whatever, you know, I got more money than you. That power. I got more money than you, so therefore your emotional existence is invalid and I am balanced and I have it all together. From all of this work that I've done in therapy, right, trying to learn how to regulate my emotions, grow, heal, recover from trauma, I've picked up a lot of emotional intelligence along the way. And in these high conflict situations or in these conversations can, let's say, be very grounded and impactful. But people who don't want to do that sort of emotional work or don't want to be accountable for things. They just want to stay in there, are very quick to dismiss and be like, oh no, you're showing emotions, and so therefore you're imbalanced or unbalanced or something. But these aren't the ones that are going to have that conversation with you directly and be like, hey, what can I do to provide or bring more balance to your life? These are the ones that are more like, well, if this person were more like me and did the things that I did, which they're not doing, then they would be just fine. So instead of talking to them directly to see what they need to find an harmonic balance in relationship, I'm going to deflect all of that and put it onto that person and say that person, because they have emotions or something, or because they're trying to regulate, bring justice to the world, they're the ones that are imbalanced. You know, like for Valentine's Day, being given a balance candle by somebody who perceives me to be emotionally imbalanced. Yet when we go to have conversation or to address discontent within their relationship, they're the one to become volatile and imbalanced and can't stay present in that space, and then have to leave to maintain control or this ideology. Interesting, right? A person who is never bored, seldom anxious, involved with what goes on, and in flow most of the time may be said to have an autotelic self. The term literally means a self that has self-contained goals, and it reflects the idea that such an individual has relatively few goals that do not originate from within the self. For most people, goals are shaped directly by biological needs and social conventions, and therefore their origin is outside the self, like trying to people please, right? Keeping up with the Joneses, that kind of thing. For an autotelic person, the primary goals emerge from experience evaluated in consciousness, and they're from the self proper, right? This is not needing somebody to tell me who I am and what it is. This is me knowing from within that I paint the picture and I determine that. And because somebody perceives something to be something doesn't mean that that's true. Like, that person can't get inside of your skin and inside of your body and see through your eyes and get it. And that comes through compassion and empathy and understanding and a very evolved form of interrelating with people that we just don't necessarily teach in this culture. The autotelic self transforms potentially entropic experience into flow. Right? So how in these talking shit moments, or in these moments where you perceive people to be talking shit because it's not aligning with the view of who you think you are, how can you engage in such a way or interact with people to benefit everybody? Because when somebody jumps to that automatic defense of, hey, you said something or whatever that made me feel bad or look bad, instead of being like, hey, you said this, and I'm curious to know why. What can I do better? And then to actually hear that feedback, and to take that, like in an art critique, everybody should have to take an art class and sit through an art critique, because here you are putting your heart and your soul and all your things out there and whatever, and in a critique, it's different. It's not like you're putting your work up and going, oh, that looks like this. No, they're not mocking it. They're not making fun of it. They're not degrading it. They're not downplaying it. They're not trying to take the power away from it. It's looking at the objective facts and structures, the technique, right? when you understand artistic technique, you can look at something and be like, oh, I can tell exactly how that person painted that. Or there's these, so we're talking about turning like these difficult things into beauty, or this tragedy into beauty. Beauty, as somebody who's researched neurological implications of aesthetics and consciousness for a really long time, right? Like, there are specific formulas, there are things out there, not even formulas, like laws of nature that indicate to us harmony, beauty, the golden ratio. We're talking about like fractals. Like, there is a, like, quote unquote science behind beauty and what people perceive to be that. So, like, if you're making a painting and an art critique and you're not, say, using the correct proportions, or you're not taking into account these laws and these rules when you're applying it to your work, I mean, it's completely obvious. And you try to point that out to somebody, hey, this is a little off-centered if you put this over here. People get so hurt and attached to some of these of like, oh my god, like, and like, don't get me wrong, like, I've definitely been in art classes in situations where like my ego has been fucking handed over to me. I had a teacher once who made me cry. You know, or had another instructor, professor, tell me, like, okay, so like not making me cry to make me feel bad, but one of those of like, okay, here you are coming in and you're bringing this thing and you're so proud of it and you want everybody to tell you it's so great and awesome and amazing. But I know you can do better, and I know that once you grasp 3-point perspective and you apply that 3-point perspective to this, the concept that you're trying to convey through this image is going to be so much more impactful and so much more powerful if you do it in 3-point perspective, or just the way it was presented. And it was one of those in such a way where it was like a side project, not a class project, but one of those things where other kids are listening or whatever, and they're seeing me getting like favored treatment or something like that, and the teacher doesn't want to play favoritism or anything. You know, he's keeping us all at the same level, and uses this as an opportunity, I think, to teach us all. And then for me, it's just like, oh my god, as an example, I could have done a little bit, but he was right. And I went back and I put it into 3-point perspective, and it turned into one of my favorite paintings and one of the most powerful paintings, and one that I got to sell for a lot of money, and to a person who is very important to me. So great. Or for example, I've had this other professor or whatever say to me that at one point, I think you could have taken a more intelligent approach to that. You know, and then depending on the perception and the lens that you're looking through, is just like, oh, you know, you can get to this, what do you mean? And oh, this guy, I can't believe he made it. You know, this is like early college, early 20s, and, you know, I'm just at home and I'm just like, what does he mean? I brought this thing into class to work on, and he's like, oh no, fine, not a whole lot of feedback as I'm working on it, you know, just watching me make an ass of myself. Oh no. That's happened a couple of times too, where these teachers just watch me make an ass of myself. Instead of calling me in it, you know, they put it up for critique, and everyone's just like, you're like, ugh. It's done nothing but make me a better person, a stronger person, a more empathetic and caring, strategic. I'll take that word wrong. I say don't, and then some people are like, you're this. Okay, so like, then you're falling into this attitude of ungratitude, right? And then trying to, as means to deflect or kind of avoid the point that we're trying to get to here. We have to circumnavigate it. We kind of have to go around about in such a way for people to really grasp this, because when you put something very direct in front of people and very critical in front of people, they're so sensitive and they don't know how to receive it, and they feel so hurt and personally attacked. And it's like, this isn't an attack on your character. You know, this is seeing room for improvement and how you can grow. This is holding you accountable to shitty things, because we can't just pretend that that never happened or those things weren't said. Like, that's a behavior that needs to be changed across the board. And it's like this transference thing. Once you figure it out in one area of your life, it's going to transfer to the other areas of your life, and it's just going to kind of click, which makes this area or this space a really interesting space for that, because we can alchemize some of this information, and whatever emotional stuff is coming up for you is going to be different than other people listening to this. And so in, say, speaking to these vagaries in a roundabout yet direct way, I don't know, the mystique of enlightenment is catching my eye here too. Let's kind of go this way. So it's not just me telling you, there's feedback, right? And like I said, for the last couple of weeks, been meditating on this and reflecting on this information, and gathering the right energy to be able to present this in such a way. Okay, so therefore, the rules for developing such a self are simple, and they derive directly from the flow model. Briefly, they can be summarized as follows. Okay, setting goals. To be able to experience flow, one must have clear goals to strive for. Okay. If there's no clear goal or no clear directive, or that goalpost marker keeps moving, right? Or if that goal is like a carrot string, you know, that you're running after that you can never catch, you can't get into flow state. You end up putting somebody into survival mode when you're moving those goalpost markers, or making it impossible for people to achieve and attain those goals, because they're not, let's say, people pleasing. So this is what this book is talking about, as far as like the autotelic self. When you're creating goals and setting goals for yourself, these can be need to be intrinsically generated goals of eating healthier, having healthier habits, treating people better, reaching a certain age with health, and, you know, achieving a milestone or a marker, like a doctorate or a certification, being able to materialize something that you've wanted to, right? But that comes from within, and as soon as you attach those goals onto other people, right, or you, not to say that you can't have mutual goals, but if those mutual goals aren't supported by personal goals, then you run the risk of, like I said, somebody using that carrot on a string thing, or moving that goalpost marker around. So it's something that you can never have. There's like a power dynamic or some sort of control level there, where the goal in that situation is for the person to control you, or to prevent you from reaching your full potential and achieving that goal. So sometimes it's really important to keep these personal goals to yourself, right? Or not. Sometimes it's really helpful to be like, hey, I have this goal, and you put it out there, and by putting that goal out there, you're asking for other people to hold you accountable, like, hey, I saw that you were trying to reach this goal, and, you know, I see that you're, you know, go over here, and you're gonna, you know, setting goals, becoming immersed in the activity, right? Being immersed in the activity is the commitment, is the dedication, it's the part where you're doing the work and you're identifying with that. an ironic thing I did yesterday I want to talk about here in a minute too, because in this reflexive process, again, what's the function? To achieve involvement with an action system, one must find a relatively close mesh between the demands of the environment and one's capacity to act. Antecedent behavior, consequences, basic foundational behaviorism here. I did a post, a couple of posts below, writing about kind of the foundations of that, so we can talk more about that too. I think that's kind of important. With the starting, kind of the foundation of this whole transformation thing guide that I'm trying to put together. For instance, suppose a person walks into a room full of people and decides to join the party. That is, to get acquainted with as many people as possible while having a good time. If the person lacks an autotelic self, he might be incapable of starting an interaction by himself and withdraw into a corner, hoping that someone will notice him. Like the people who need other people there to help validate and justify their actions, or not being able to have the confidence or self-worth, I guess, or the independence, autonomy. Autotelic, it's talking more about autonomy. And if you're not in autonomy, right, and then you're in dependency, and then you're depending on the people in your life to define your life. Is that what it is? I'll keep reading. Or he may try to be boisterous and overly slick, turning people off with inappropriate or superficial friendliness. Neither strategy would be very successful or likely to provide a good time. A person with an autotelic self, upon entering the room, would shift his attention away from himself to the party. The action system, this is systems thinking, right? The action system he wishes to join. He would observe the guests, try to guess which of them might have matching interests and compatible temperament, and start talking to that person about topics he suspects will be mutually agreeable. If the feedback, that word again, is negative, talking shit, if the conversation turns out to be boring or above the partner's head, he will try a different topic or a different partner. Only when a person's actions are appropriately matched with the opportunities of the action system does he truly become involved. Involvement is greatly facilitated by the ability to concentrate. Patience pays. Wait. Good things will come. Consolidate. Concentrate. Just be you. Autonomic, autotelic, like be yourself and stop trying to adjust who you are to try and control the affects of the people or the environment around you, because you can't. That control is an illusion. What do you mean? Blah, 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 blah. It's a conditioning. Okay? And then to want to control another person, or to control the outcome of something, like, when did God come down and give you that power of authority over everybody else? Like, who says? Right? Like, what makes you so much better? It's tough. I feel like the people who are not open or receptive to feedback or to critique are some of the most dangerous people. They're the ones that go talking shit. They're the ones that go into this destructive mode. Right? Because they're not being autonomous. Like, for example, this former employer, and I think it's really interesting to like watch some of these dynamics, because you can see how berating this person can be towards, say, his partner, his wife, to other clients, and clients after they leave the office, especially. You see that these people talk down to or berate people in such a way where it gives them like the upper hand. Oh, if this person didn't have me, what would they do without me? Like, oh, my wife couldn't even figure out how to catch a mouse or whatever, and she's going, oh, and there's this whole dynamic where I gotta come in and rescue and like be the macho because, I told her how to take care of the mouse. And it's just like, what the... But this person is also doing the work to support the other person's stuff, right? This person over here who's talking shit and doing whatever, is at a high risk dependency for success based on the ability to support and control another person. And if that person weren't there, then that business wouldn't be thriving. It wouldn't be what it is, right? But they'll twist it and turn the narrative in such a way, but I'm the one. The mystique of enlightenment keeps catching my eye over there on the bookshelf. Breaking the death habit is catching my eye too. Maybe we'll go into that. I like reading into books, I think, if not more, than reading into cards. Let me go into this last paragraph on becoming immersed in the activity in regards to getting into flow. Because I don't know. I feel like this is where the most resistance is met. I think people culturally now are pretty good at defining goals and what it is that they want and who it is that they want to be. But when it comes to immersing themselves in the activity and getting into this place of discomfort or unfamiliarity or autonomy, or having to be accountable for whatever having to learn, be conscious, actively conscious of your words and actions and interactions with others, right? This is where people, I think, are really getting stuck. The one after this is paying attention to what is happening, and people don't want to pay attention to what is happening. They want to think that what is happening or what they think is happening is real, that their thoughts and ideologies and this narrative that they built up within themselves is real. And it can be very difficult for them to step back and objectively look at data. Now, as somebody who's trained as a applied behavioral therapist, not licensed or anything, but pretty gosh darn good when it comes to behavioral understandings, and somebody who is was research certified for 6 years, very good at show me the data, looking at the data, looking at the facts, looking at the patterns, detaching myself emotionally, detaching my own ego enough emotionally to be able to look at a situation objectively, to, again, understand, break apart the patterns and figure out where within that pattern there can be an adjustment made so that flow can happen and flow can occur. It's taken lots of practice and lots of dedication. It's not just something that I, read a book and decided, oh, I'm good at this. Like I said, this has been decades of processing and learning and doing the work. And so in this step and phase of my life where I get to apply that, Um, this is what we're getting into here. Okay. Another bit of information that came to me this morning. Turning my mess into a message. Because believe me, just my life is a mess. Creatively, like things are just, it can be very messy. But I kind of like it that way. I don't need everything to be like neat and tidy and orderly in its place all the time. Although it's helpful a lot of times. I give myself a lot of grace to be messy and to not be in control of things. When I was little, when I was younger, I had would I say a control problem or something like that. But I was definitely the kid where in like my box of markers or crayons or whatever, in terms of processing, there was a very specific sequence of control in order to make this process happen. Like, you know, the crayons had to be over here, they had to be in rainbow order, and before I could sit down and do the work, you know, everything would have to be in rainbow order. And heaven forbid a friend come along. My closet was the same way. Everything was in color order, size ordered. I mean, shit, fucking organized to the T, to a controlled T, to the point where if anybody came in and moved anything and put anything anywhere else, like panic attack, like I can't engage in my process, I can't do this because this one tiny little benign element was off or out of control. So very consciously, from a pretty young age, I've been working on that, working through that. And so I've given myself the grace and the permission just to be messy and see what happens. Well, what happens if I sit down to create and make something and all of my crayons and my markers are out of color order? Nothing bad happens. Like, everything I need is still there. So at this whole point of like turning a mess into a message, that's what the creative process is about. I do a lot of work with like collaging and found objects and turning like junk into something beautiful, not only in a conceptual way but in a literal way. So this whole like, I don't know, this is resonating. Am I getting off topic? I'm gonna try not to. I have a tendency to talk a lot here. There's a lot of information, but again, if you have questions, you can put them down in the comment feed and I'll do my best to watch and to answer that. If not, thank you for being here and for listening and being receptive to this information, and trusting me as your reader to be able to tap in to the things that you haven't quite been able to voice yet. Let's go back to this. Involvement is greatly facilitated by the ability to concentrate. People who suffer from attentional disorders, who cannot keep their minds from wandering, always feel left out of the flow of life. They are at the mercy of whatever stray stimulus happens to flash by. To be distracted against one's will is the surest sign that one is not in control. Yet it is amazing how little effort most people make to improve control of their attention. So we're not talking about trying to control or regulate other people in order to, let's say, take the attention off of ourselves and to put that attention onto somebody else, or put that focus and that responsibility and duty onto somebody else. We're talking about controlling our own attention, controlling our own aspects of consciousness, being consciously enough aware of ourselves to understand and recognize our own patterns and to be able to objectively take note of where we are at within those patterns at any given moment in time, and to make adjustments from there, wise adjustments. You can't control other people. The only thing you can control is where your attention goes. And where your attention goes, the energy flows. Okay? Energy cannot be created or destroyed. It's just going to be there. And so whatever it is that you're attending to is going to inform the direction of that energy. So again, what's the function of it all? If reading a book seems too difficult, instead of sharpening concentration, we tend to set it aside and instead turn on the television, create distractions, which not only requires minimal attention, but in fact tends to diffuse what little it commands with choppy editing, commercial interruptions, and generally inane content. You're talking about tapping into programming and then programming your mind and falling into this matrix program or the system program that's designed to control your behavior. Because you're releasing that control, you're giving that control, or putting that responsibility and duty onto somebody else. And the hard part is, once you're aware of it, once you understand that, once you see that as your responsibility, it then therefore becomes your duty to be accountable to it, right? To maintain that balance. Okay? Okay? We can't control other people. We can only control our judgments. Oftentimes, people want to go right to that defensive mode. Oh, is that good? Oh, is that bad? Is it good? Like, they have to slap this label of either good or bad on something. And the thing in and of itself is neither good or bad. It's just a thing, right? It's the way we perceive that function of that object. Is that function of serving me? Is it getting my needs met? Is it, well, and then as soon as you label the good or the bad, or you create that condition, the energy flows into that space. So paying attention to what is happening. Concentration leads to involvement, which can only be maintained by constant inputs of intention. It takes work, it takes practice. Meditation is a practice, yoga is a practice, art is a practice, music practice, emotional regulation practice. You have to do it every day. You have to make that conscious effort to be like, you know what? This is what I'm doing. This is who I am. This is what I need. This is, and then to stick to that, to maintain those goals. Get a really good look at yourself. Are my actions in alignment with my goals? And if I don't have a solid goal to strive for, what are we doing here? Okay. Athletes are aware that in a race, even a momentary lapse can spell complete defeat. A heavyweight champion may be knocked out if he does not see his opponent's uppercut coming. The basketball player will miss the net if he allows himself to be distracted by the roaring of the crowd. You're going to miss your target and you're going to fall off your goals, and you're not going to achieve and be your best self if you're feeding into and attending to this whole talking shit narrative. Okay. And it's one of those, like, goes both ways, whether you're the one talking shit or whether people are talking shit about you or whatever in that gossip realm and that whole thing. It's a distraction. Right, remember that program? It's going to control the masses that says one is good, one is bad, them versus them, and they pit us all into this thing where we start crab bucketing. Trying to maintain this balance. Sometimes it's okay to come along and tip the scales. Things don't need to be level and even keel all the time and, perfectly predictable and maintainable all the time. There's a lot of innovation that can come through the mess and the chaos, and priorities are coming to mind, right? What is the most important in regards to the priorities. What are you prioritizing? What was that word that they diffuse? It's like, what are you trying to diffuse and what are you trying to blow up? Like, what's the connotation behind the language, right? Like, look at the etymology of the words and the word choices. Like, that's really important. Right? Vibrations inform the shape of the material world, right? That's your words. The same pitfalls threaten anyone who participates in a complex system. That's us. We're in a complex system, okay? And if we're interrelating, we're participating in that. We can create new systems, but begins with some conscious effort and doing things a little bit differently and no longer participating in the systems that aren't working. You don't need to go battle and destroy and go take down and go try to like argue with the systems that aren't working. Just stop participating and engaging in the things that perpetuate that system. Stop. Don't do it. You can control yourself, control your emotions, control your words, and fucking detach enough from the ego that you can co-regulate, co-create, communicate. The same pitfalls threaten anyone who participates in a complex system. To stay in it, he must keep investing psychic energy. The parent who does not listen closely to his child undermines the interaction. The lawyer whose attention lapses may forfeit the case, and the surgeon whose mind wanders may lose the patient. Having an autotelic self implies the ability to sustain involvement, to stay present, to stay with it. In heated emotional conversations or anything related to PTSD and post-traumatic stress or anything like that, if there's triggers or there's stuff that'll come up, all these other associations are going to come with it. And if you bring all of those into the present moment and start engaging with the present moment, if those things are real and those things are present here, you start projecting these past traumas onto the person that you're with now, or overlapping. You're getting distracted. You're not doing the work. You're avoiding something. Instead of worrying about how he is doing, how he looks on the outside, he is wholeheartedly committed to his goals. In some cases, it is the depth of involvement that pushes self-consciousness out of awareness. While sometimes it is the other way around, it is the very lack of self-consciousness that makes deep involvement possible. Right? That's that detachment from the ego and not trying to control the environment and the outcome. The elements of the autotelic personality are related to one another by links of mutual causation. So when we start getting into this realm of talking shit and pointing fingers and will you, this is an energy exchange that I really don't like on a lot of different levels, where it's just that heated intensity of defensiveness and the you, like that pointing, that's energy being directed, and that like that hurts. That's making somebody else the cause of something while dismissing and removing yourself, removing any accountability and autonomy from that situation and putting all of that onto another person. Personally, I don't want to give somebody that sort of power over me to be like, well, you and your fault and it's a tricky line to walk, though, because in being able to recognize patterns, can see, well, when A is B and then C, that's not okay with me, people aren't going to want to take responsibility in that situation, right? And so in that mutual causation, I always come back to what am I doing that is creating this circumstance, or what am I doing that is also feeding into this circumstance? Sometimes it's me coming out of a space of like giving my power away. Sometimes it's like a space of lessons or containers. Oh, the three other words that popped up in terms of people, what was it? Key holders, anchors, and what was the third one? Key holders, anchors, and I can't think of the third one, but it's the anchoring that I'm thinking of, like the anchors, the ones that hold the space, and the containers for a lot of this energy to be alchemized, for it to come up into process, because you can't, in the process of eliminating the shit, you can't just sweep the shit under the rug and pretend like it's not there. I mean, shit, it's gonna smell. It's going to fester. It's going to like start growing stuff. It's going to attract gross things to it. You know, so if you're like, oh, what stinks? Oh, I don't know, just like spray something, just cover it up. You gotta lift up the rug and you gotta look underneath and be like, look, that's shit. And it's stinking stuff up, and it does not belong under the rug, right? It's not like, shit's never not going to be there. I mean, we put something in and then something comes out, right? It's the waste and the leftovers. But that waste, right, that tragedy can be repurposed. It can be composted when put in the right environment, can break down in such a way that cultivates consciousness or cultivates growth, cultivates life and brings good things to it. But it's got to be in the right environment for that to happen. It doesn't matter where one starts, whether one chooses goals first, develops skills, cultivates the ability to concentrate, or gets rid of self-consciousness. One can start anywhere, because once the flow experience is in motion, the other elements will be much easier to attain. It's not linear. Like time, it's not linear. It's very much spider-webbed. It's not like there's a right or a wrong way to do it. It's, are you doing it or are you not? It's not about being right, wrong, good, bad. It either is or it isn't. I could go into this so much, but I don't think I'm going to. Let's just go with perhaps both interpretations are accurate. You can take with that whatever you mean, because this is going to be interpreted from whatever lens that you're coming from, and so we'll validate your personal experience. In the long run, however, looking at the world exclusively from the little window that oneself affords is always limiting. Perspective taking is an incredible superpower. If you can learn perspective taking and how to take other perspectives, it's gonna do the world a lot of good. Even the most highly respected physicist, artist, or politician becomes a hollow bore and ceases to enjoy life if all he can interest himself in is his limited role in the universe. I want to speak into more of that because I just don't at the moment. I think whoever needs to hear that or whatever will respond to that accordingly. For kind of the last point in the flow book, then we can dive into some other cards, maybe grab out another book or something like that, and then we'll work off closing this space. If you want a one-to-one reading or a personal reading or something, please DM me, reach out, email me, however you need to find me and contact me. I'm pretty good at that sliding scale thing and meeting people where they're at in terms of help and resources. I'd rather not turn somebody away who needs the help, if that helps, because I think there's just this like barrier that prevents people from wanting to reach out. Mostly I think it's because they're just wanting this, they're wanting the coddling, they're not wanting the rawness maybe of it, or the critique. Learning to enjoy immediate experience. The outcome of having an autotelic self of learning to set goals, to develop skills, to be sensitive to feedback, to know how to concentrate and get involved, is that one can enjoy life even when objective circumstances are brutish and nasty. This is like making the best out of shit, right? This is just taking a really shitty experience and circumstance and seeing the lesson in it, finding the light side in it, figuring out what is this trying to teach you and what is this trying to show you. Being in control of the mind means that literally anything that happens can be a source of joy. Just be careful not to get in a situation where you're tolerating less than you deserve, because you can find happiness in there. There's boundaries, safety, self-respect, things like that you have to take into mind. This is like going into mindfulness too, right? Feeling a breeze on a hot day, seeing a cloud reflected on the glass facade of a high-rise, working on a business deal, watching a child play with a puppy, drinking a glass of water can all be felt as deeply satisfying experiences that enrich one's life. And sometimes one of the most enriching experiences. Some of these principles are like alluding to like dialectic behavior therapy too, and how we're talking to ourselves and the words that we're choosing to program our belief systems with. To achieve this goal, or to achieve this control, requires determination and discipline. Optimal experience is not the result of a hedonistic, lotus-eating approach to life. A relaxed, laissez-faire attitude is not a sufficient defense against chaos. As we have seen from the very beginning of this book, to be able to transform random events into flow, one must develop skills that stretch capacities and make one become more than what one is. And the people who want to get into the chit talk and all of that don't want to grow. They want to stay right where they're at because they're content, they have a sense of control, it's predictable, it gives them a sense of power over somebody else. It's ego, feeds the ego. We're talking about human evolution here too. We're talking about becoming more than what we think we can be. This is the essence of the transformation guide. Homo luminous or bust. Are we going to stay in this Homo sapient mentality and keep playing out these same games and programs and systems that have been failing humanity and the world and the globe and life as a whole? Or do we shift into a more evolved state, a homo luminous state, where we are light beings, light bodies, whatever our consciousness shapes the world around us? We're not sapiens who are at the demise or the whim of Mother Nature. We are Mother Nature itself, expressing itself as humans with a duty to do better, be better, grow, heal, love, evolve, nurture species, care for other people, care for living systems, nurturing growth and sustainability. And we don't do that by putting people down, and we don't do that by calling people names, and we don't do that by assuming and infusing our ideologies into the you. You. We don't do that here. Flow drives individuals to creativity and outstanding achievement. The necessity to develop increasingly refined skills to sustain enjoyment is what lies behind the evolution of culture. Right? This is why I cultivate conscious co-creative communities in culture. This is why we're talking about cultivating consciousness and why we go into this realm of this work that I do. Right? It's just been difficult trying to attach the words and to write the program and to it's timing, right? It's got to come from a space of higher alignment and channeling information and presented in such a way that it can be consumed. It motivates both individuals and cultures to change into more complex entities. The rewards of creating order and experience provide the energy that propels evolution. They pave the way for those dimly imagined descendants of ours, more complex and wise than we are, who will soon take our place. But to change all existence into a flow experience, it's not sufficient to learn merely how to control moment-by-moment states of consciousness. It is also necessary to have an overall context of goals for the events of everyday life to make sense. There's a level of holism there and holistic expectations there, right? In the good of all, for the good of all, must be beneficial to all, not just beneficial to a limited few or a limited view in you. If a person moves from one flow activity to another without a connecting order, it will be difficult at the end of one's life to look back on the years past and find meaning in what has happened. And I think this is a big part of like the meaning of life, is to find meaning itself or to create meaning. Yeah, but what does it mean? And we're talking about, well, what does it mean? We're talking about the function of the behavior. So if we're trying to find meaning and create meaningful connections in these instances, is, oh, you're talking shit, so well, fuck you, I'm just gonna whatever. This is like, okay, well, you said something, what does it mean? What is the meaning behind it? What's the function behind that, right? And, oh, okay, so the function of that is to do better, be better, grow better. I can acknowledge where my limitations are, where I'm not doing well enough, where I'm harming other people or whatever, and adjust, make adjustments accordingly, and therefore cultivate a conscious co-creative community. But people will want to you put that work and that emotional labor onto other people. Deferment. Defer and dismiss. create harmony in whatever one does is the last task that the flow theory presents to those who wish to attain optimal experience. It's a task that involves transforming the entirety of life into a single flow activity with unified goals that provide constant purpose. Well, that's good. Let's just stop there. Well, let's close this off kind of properly, because I think a lot of people are still kind of in this judgment space, or this negative judgment space, and they're like, no, thank you. I can't look there. I can't go into emotions. I'm just going to like dismiss and defer, or whatever. Or like, I'm just gonna be foolish, or I'm just gonna like, whatever, do what I want anyway. Who cares what you have to say? There's that apathy. That apathy is going to be another one that deters it, is the fear and the wondering of the whatever, of like. But homo luminous or bust, baby. Let's talk about being the stars, right? Being the light, being the truth, the pure essence of not conformed or defined by the material meat suit, right? A lot of people want to look at the meat suit and then make their evaluations or their judgment based off of what something looks like. But what have we learned in the last couple of years of doing this here in this space? Nothing is what it seems to be. Things aren't what they look like. There's a facade, if there's something being portrayed differently, or if there's no facade and you think there's a facade, right? Like, let's talk about nonsense, because talking shit, nonsense, right? Painting the roses red is underneath this one too. So this one again is not taking accountability for actions and trying to cover something up. And that's just not okay. And you have to be ready that when you break the mold of this system, or when you start doing things different, or you hold people accountable, or you stand in your power and your authenticity and your truth, and stop feeding into these narratives, that it's going to upset people. And you have to get really good at sitting in discomfort and getting to this place of flow, in this flow state, and doing the work that is uncomfortable. It's just part of it. It's learning to sit through difficult things and difficult whatever, and not feeling like you need to control the outcome of something, but allowing the information to come up, allowing the shit to come up, right? Allowing the shit to expose itself, and then addressing it, navigating it, right? Figuring out where it goes in life. So nonsense, it's time to talk sense. We're not talking shit. And if you're gonna take somebody's critique is that, then you're a big baby. But you also can't sit there and let somebody be like, oh, this, and then play into these dialogues where people are just talking shit because they will, to make themselves feel better. Nonsense. It's time to talk sense. Okay, Queen of Hearts. This is like getting the control of the emotions, the control of the mind, right? This one's not very long, so I might just read the whole thing. I'm reading out of the other book, so it's like story hour, coffee time, might as well, right? Again, if anything comes up or if you have questions, please reach out and connect with me. The queen turned crimson with fury, and after glaring at her for a moment like a wild beast, began screaming, "Off with her head! Off with it!" "Nonsense," said Alice, very loudly and decidedly, and the queen was silent, right? So this is like when you bring truth or critique to something or whatever, or when you expose something corrupted, the current cultural reaction, let's say, to it is oh no, shut her up, she can't do that, you can't say this. And there's just been so many times within art and within this, like, we're supposed to have First Amendment rights here, and within art and putting the things in there, or wanting to do things my way to get into flow and to stay in this flow. Oh no, you can't do that, that's not whatever, you have to be normal. Or like, there's just so much fucking judgment, and if you do it anyway and you stand in that power, there are those people that are going to come along and be like, oh, take her out, take her whatever she, and or he, or blah, 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 and like, it's just nonsense. Okay, if I'm talking shit, call me out on it. If I'm critiquing and you're getting mad and taking away my power, where are we going here? Sometimes, like Alice, you're going to surprise yourself with your courage. When someone is being aggressive and threatening, you will need to stand up to them and speak to them in a very firm and strong manner. Much as Alice does to the Queen, who is overly fond of abusing her power, threatening nearly everybody, and relating to people in one way only, overbearance. Right? This is like, I'm in charge, I make the rules, I do things, it's going to be my way. If you come in and try to question anything or question my authority or tell me I'm doing something wrong or different or whatever, then I'm going to come along and I'm going to destroy you and I'm going to make your life horrible and I'm going to ruin you and not take any accountability for my actions and continue to do things that are mean and hurtful and harmful to other people because I need to stay in power and control. That's that, right? And we're not doing that here. Okay? It's not okay to threaten somebody passively, verbally. Well, this is different than being perceived as a threat by somebody. And I feel like as the transformation guide, the essence of my energy as a catalyst catalyzes change in people. This catalyzes energy. And I've been in situations before where people have perceived me as a threat when I haven't done anything. I haven't explicitly threatened, say, oh, if you do this and I'm going to do this, or I don't know, like, not okay. Or just creating these alternatives of like, oh, if you're not gonna align or whatever, then somebody else can come in and I can just whatever. Like, those are subtle forms of threats too. Like, if you don't comply or whatever, acquiesce or do things a certain way, then there's like this underlying dynamic of it's just like, oh shit, you just need to like learn when to walk away and have strong boundaries and learn to know when to not tolerate certain behaviors and attitudes. And more often than not, I've just seen, especially in these group settings where there's just people talking shit about other people or who aren't there and in the room, and everybody's just feeding into this. Like, there are a lot of like bystanders and people who will just allow it to happen. Very, very rarely will somebody come in and stand up and be like, talking shit about somebody who is not here and in this room is not okay. And again, like, if somebody is saying something and they're critiquing and you're not there, and then you find out and you go or whatever, if those people can't be like, well, yeah, that's absolutely what I said. I said these things. I have these critiques. There are these things that you're doing that I don't agree with and I'm not in alignment with, which is why I shared this with these people. Do I have the floor and the opportunity to have that conversation, or is any dissent perhaps going to be perceived as something that needs to be eliminated? Because if me expressing my opinion and my experience is going to be met with violence or aggression or agitation or like a level of control that has to do with me accessing resources I need to make my basic needs met, which is Alice does to the queen, right? Speaks up and stands her ground. She asserts herself to the queen, who is overly fond of abusing her power, threatening nearly everybody and relating to people in one way only, overbearing. I'm in control, you're not. This is taking place with a person or situation within your life. You need to call that someone out on their bad behavior. Okay, this is that opportunity of like, if somebody's trying to overbear and talk shit and whatever, call them out on their bad behavior and be like, that's not okay. And you don't need to punish it. You don't need to be like, oh, well, you did this to me, and so, I'm going to seek vengeance and revenge, and I'm going to punish you, and I'm going to get back to you, or, get back at you, whatever law. Like, that's not what that is. This is, hey, A, B happened, and C, and this is what it means to me. That's not the same thing. There's an opportunity there to build connection, to build community, and to grow and to evolve. And oftentimes people dismiss that opportunity, and they stay at the level that they're at to maintain that perceived level of control. Excuse me. While looking at this other person as the cause or the problem or the reason, right? Or removing a person's resources so that they are unable to stand up for themselves too. Like Alice, you do not need to say very much or criticize the person, argue with them, or even point out what they're doing. You simply need to be firm, clear, and direct, and cut through all the nonsense that is taking place, which is more like a I do not allow this sort of behavior. Enough said, enough done, and don't allow it. And if the person continues to do the sort of behavior that you're not allowing in your life, then you can't allow that person to be in your life, right? If you do this, you will silence them and they can do you no harm. Let's talk about this one for a second, because if we're talking about behaviorism, what they're alluding to here is if we're not reinforcing a behavior and we're not punishing a behavior, then if we don't want a behavior, then we put it on extinction, right? We just don't respond to it. We don't acknowledge it, and, right, we don't attend to it. And if we've been attending to it before, feeding it before, and we take that attention away, you'll get something called an extinction burst. All right, this is the tantrum. This is the person engaging in whatever behaviors, reckless behaviors, whatever they can to try to get attention, to be able to maintain that behavior that they're engaging in that they don't want. And if you give the kid the candy for throwing the tantrum, the kid learns that, well, all I need to do is throw a tantrum and I'll get what I want. So if you're putting somebody on extinction, this whole part where they're like, if you do this, you'll silence them and they can do you no harm. This is this is how domestic violence can play out. This is how, like, I mean, not even in domestic situations, although you're more likely to be taken out by a person close to you than you are by a stranger. Perhaps for a lot of these reasons, because if you're not providing them what they want, and they're trying to get that, or they're trying to get some sort of power, people can be really fucking mean. They can be really destructive, and they will try to do things that will harm you. And you need to be prepared for that. This is not a game. This is not something to be played with. This is not a tool to use to manipulate somebody's behavior, right? Like, we don't just like start ignoring somebody because if somebody's feeling ignored or being manipulated through that, like, they're gonna get upset and they're gonna be not happy. You know, they're very likely to be angry, or like the queen even says here in this little opening, right? Off with her head. She's demanding that other people go harm her. You know, she's getting other people to do that work. So this whole, like, if you silence somebody or trying to shut somebody up, they're not going to hurt you kind of thing. That's not always true, and you need to be very careful with that. They'll be so surprised that someone is expressing their personal power and pointing out their silliness that you will be quite safe. This is like a yes and or a yes but kind of a situation, because it is important to address these sort of behaviors and to call this out and to acknowledge it. Oh, this is like a you gotta trust and have faith that you're divinely protected and that you're guided and guarded by these unseen forces outside of you. I think there's a lot of work to be done and said about energetics and personal energetics and the frequencies. Something here maybe too about like using qi or qi, qigong, these sort of things, and being able to direct energy around you, sort of a thing. Others will be grateful, and in time they too will stand up for themselves. This is like leading by example. This is like the first worker to be like, hey, these are unfair worker rights. I'm not participating. And usually the first one, or the person that goes first or that does it, is the one that is scapegoated. Or like, I mean, even for example, on a much lighter note, I was watching this video clip of a music festival. There's this grassy hill, and there's this one guy who's by himself, and he is just like dancing up a storm. He is in his element. He's in his personal autotelic, whatever. He didn't give a fuck what other people are thinking. He's dancing and he's feeling good and he's being free, and it's beautiful and it's so amazing to watch him, and you can just tell that he feels good. There's nothing about his dance that is threatening to another person. He's in his own space. He's got plenty of room around him. He's not bothering anybody. He's not hurting anybody. And you have all these people around him. This guy's going after, he's just dancing for a long time. Like, he's not stopping. He's on dance, and there's nothing that's going to stop this guy. He's dancing through the whole music festival, right? And you get these people around that are just like watching him, and they're all like, oh my god, do you see that guy over there? He's dancing all by himself. I know! Who would do that? Don't you think he's embarrassed? Oh, I don't know. I can't, how would, and all these people are thinking inside of themselves, they're like, wow, I really wish I could be dancing right now. I really wish that I could just be in the flow with the music and feeling it and moving my body. But instead, I gotta like close off, because I don't want people to think that I'm weird for dancing at a music festival, right? And this guy's dancing and dancing and dancing. And eventually, there's like one other guy who comes up or whatever and starts dancing with him. And so there's the two of them, right? And they're like, yeah, dancing, and some more time passes, and then another guy and his friend come in, right? So one was two became four. There's four of them dancing, and they're doing their thing, moral to the story. At the end of this, this one singular guy who's the weirdo dancing by himself, and, the end of this, he's got all of these people around him who are just dancing and dancing with him. They're part of it. They're in that flow element, and it's beautiful. And it's this really fascinating human psychological, sociological phenomena that happens, right? So usually the first person to stand up and say, hey, or the first person to do something is going to be doing it by themselves for a while before other people join in. And it's not that it's bad, it's not that it's whatever, it's kind of the laws of nature, the laws of physics, and how things are designed to work. I don't know if that's true. That can be interpreted some ways. But this whole nonsense thing, this is leading by example, by doing the work, by doing the things. And oftentimes you don't have to sit there, you don't have to try and convince the people around you of hey, you should be dancing over here. You need to be dancing like this. I'm dancing, so you should too. Or he's just dancing because it's organic. It's natural. It's what our biological system is programmed, designed to do. It is designed to respond to vibration and to movement. This is why dance, music, art has been such a vital force defining cultures from the beginning of civilization, right? We cannot separate the art from the human, but the human denies that side of themselves. They deny that self-expression of themselves to try to be the superhuman or this robot. Soulless, lifeless, good programmed, whatever, doesn't have to be accountable for anything other people are taking account for him. He's just a cog in the wheel in a system and is doing his thing and his part just because that's just how it is. But we're shifting that narrative, we're changing that narrative. Others will be grateful, and in time they too will stand up for themselves. Even though you may not be as powerful as this other person, your inner courage, when expressed, makes you an amazing person who can change the world with a simple refusal to tolerate bad behavior for one moment longer. And with this former employer who's just I'm firing you because you're talking shit. I'm not talking shit. I'm working with an artist over here who got fucked over, and from my professional experience, standing up for and representing somebody who doesn't have the voice for herself in the context of the situation, or she does, but you're not listening, and so I'm standing with her, reinforcing what she's saying too, low, shitty behavior. But in the context of that, I'm not going to try and stay in that environment and to stay in that container and to try to prove myself and prove my worth or try to whatever. That's just thinks I'm moving on now. I don't need to participate, don't need to tolerate that, don't need to be in that space and whatever. And it was just okay, well, here's the paperwork, and I could tell he was nervous and all anxious. Could have made a scene, could have, cried and threw a big old fit and tried to defend myself or tried to justify or whatever or anything. None of that happened. It was just ooh, I'll go get the key for you. Here, sign the paperwork, grab my shit, and then go. Peace. Alright. If you can't see my worth and my value and all of that, well, that falls on you, your loss. I have peace now. I have peace of mind. I have peace of heart. I don't have to associate or affiliate myself with somebody whose values aren't in alignment with my own. And the lesson in this for me was maybe a month or 2 months before that, wanting to quit, just being done, and just being like, this is not serving me, it's not serving my highest good, it's not in alignment with what I value and what I think is right or good, you know? Like, this is not an environment that's making me happy. This is an environment that is depleting my happiness and taking all of that away. And I had expressed that to someone, and their reaction to it was like, oh, it's not that bad, just stay with it, you need to have this, you know, and it doesn't matter that you're unhappy and that this person is doing things shitty, you know, the money is more important or something, or how people perceive, like, you just need to tolerate shitty behavior to get your paycheck, to do the things, because that's just what people do. Oh. And I'm, well, okay. Instead of listening to myself and my inner gut and my intuition and standing in my power, again, giving that power to somebody else, he was like, oh, no, it's okay, just keep giving your power away to other people. It compromised me, and it put me in a situation where, you know, truth be told, truth be exposed, I wasn't valued, and I wasn't being afforded the opportunity I was promised. And when I saw that and I realized that, okay, thank you, walk away, no big deal. And I don't need to say things or point out who, or try to, you know, I'm not doing this to try and talk shit about somebody, because I can guarantee you that this person is out there running his mouth fucking talking shit about me. Oh, well, you know, and I had to whatever, and like playing up that power or whatever dynamic game, and I can let him run his mouth and talk shit, because the people who see me, know me, understand me, who value me, won't listen to that. They're not going to feed into that. They're not going to buy into that. And when they hear that, and when they see that, when you hear this, when you see this, you right? This is where we're not tolerating it. Oh, don't tolerate it. Stop tolerating it. You don't need to punish it. You don't need to throw whatever, make a big deal out of it. Just stop engaging. Don't feed it. Hashtag feed a unicorn instead. Unicorn with the K. Sure. Courageously standing up for yourself when someone is behaving in a bad way that is silly and unfair. Refusing to be cowed. Pointing out a person's bad behavior. Not backing down on the truth. Looking someone in the eye. Being very brave, strong, and no longer intimidated. Surprising yourself with your power. Wow. You can do that? You mean I don't have to tolerate shitty behavior? I don't have to stay in an environment where I'm not valued for my contributions, where I'm only taken advantage of and exploited? Wow, what a concept, right? The other side of this is backing down at the moment of truth. This is like, well, here's your chance and here's that opportunity, and you can either say it or you don't. If you're like, I'm going to go in and I'm going to stand up for injustice today and I'm going to not tolerate this, and then you back down and you're like, well, actually, today, you know, I need this, and this person's giving me that before, and, well, I'll allow their coercive control to take my power in such a way because they're giving me something, and I'll just keep my mouth shut. Release the material attachments and go without. Learn to value something other than materialism in a consumerist society. What a concept, I know. Running from a confrontation. And the confrontation isn't like a fight, because we don't need to sit here and be contentious and argue and fight and try to battle over wills or whatever. That's not what confrontation is. Confrontation is different. As a person who's afraid of heights or afraid of, singing on a stage, right? The only way to get through that is to confront it. And it's not like I gotta go up to a microphone and a stage and be like, well, fuck your stage, let's get in a power struggle. That's fucking stupid. That's asinine. The confrontation is showing up, being present, and doing the work. Alright? I'm not going to be able to know what this feels like until I stand up in front of a microphone and I start singing. And then I'm confronting. Right? Allowing someone to intimidate you, an inability to find the courage within, fear of punishment, loss of voice, believing you cannot be brave without being aggressive. This is what those who want to take your power want you to think. Ooh, lunchtime. You can't go back to yesterday, be in the present. Believe is here. Law is not justice. Rules aren't fair. Justice is different from law. Do not drink the poison. No. Falling into the unknown, a descent, momentum, change. Like a free fall, free flow, free for all. Believe. Strange encounters, like it's just one of those situations where you have to really believe that authenticity and truth and standing in your power and going to this like evolved homo luminous like conscious co-creative cultural system thing is possible. Alright, I'm gonna pick one blurb out of Breaking the Death Habit and I'm gonna close off this channel for today. I'm gonna go eat lunch because my tummy's rumbling at me. Okay, let's do that. Instead of prolonging this and staying in this, I really like Squeaky Chair. This book, Breaking the Death Habit, Science of Everlasting Life. This is how we use our consciousness to heal ourselves, okay? So in this realm of talking shit and getting into this whatever, just down that fucking whatever, how do we climb out of that? How do we address it? How do we get into this space of fulfilled power and knowing and doing being better as a whole? Chapter 8. Part 3G? Is that right? Did I spell that right? This is page 63. Okay. 63 reduces to a 9. This is a 9 year. 2025 is a 9 year. Right? We're coming out of an 8th cycle, going into 9th, and clearing out the things that no longer serve us so that we can cultivate a fresh new beginning next year. Bhartriji is a yoga, not a guru. He has maintained a local address on planet Earth for 2,000 years. At this point in his personal development, he is a total master of his body. He can look old or young. He can adjust the age of his body as easily as we adjust the channel on our TV. He doesn't reincarnate. He has an immortal body that he has mastered. Yogis who achieve this level of mastery have an indestructible body of white light, but they appear ordinary to superficial observation. I think there's something to that superficial observation too when it comes to this theme of talking shit. Right? Superficial observation equals talking shit. If you're talking shit, that is superficial observation. It's not real, right? In fact, in studying any divine incarnation, it is difficult to discriminate the ordinary from the miraculous. Right? Drinking a glass of water, standing in the sun with bare feet, all of those incredibly miraculous experiences. If you can be in the flow and just feel it. Ultimately, there is no difference. Patriji doesn't call people to himself like Babaji does. However, when people go to him for wisdom, he usually serves them in some way. The immortals teach by example, not by lectures. By example, not sitting there trying to convince somebody. Okay? They view the mysteries of life as so simple and obvious that nothing needs to be said. And there's a lot to be said about nothing really needs to be said to convey something when 85 to 90 whatever percent of our communication is nonverbal. The majority of our communication is nonverbal. It doesn't require words. Words are such a small part of our communications. When people are talking shit, you gotta look at the other 85% of their behavior to inform you as to the function of that shit talking. I don't know if there's anything else that we need to get into today. Last chance to put something down in the comments. I'm watching. I don't know if anything has been popping up. I can see some of you popping in and out here, so thank you for showing up. Especially if you've been sitting here the whole time with me. I really appreciate it. There has to be some sort of a demonstration, right? Like, people gotta see it. There's no philosophical or scientific explanation. They just do things and let us figure them out. Jesus also did a public demonstration of immortal yoga through his death and resurrection. He said, if they believe not Moses and the prophets, neither will they believe though one rises from the dead. The Jesus demo has produced the same results for 2,000 years, right? And I think, yeah. He'll accept students if they demonstrate enough endurance. You can't endure it and you can't stick it out through the transformation guide process. I don't know what to tell you. It's a long process. It requires discipline. It requires practice. It requires endurance and dedication and commitment. And very few people can do that without reacting or deflecting that responsibility and accountability outwards to themselves, because it's like, I can't transform for you, you know, like, I'm not your mom. I can't just do it for you. You have to do it for yourself, and it's an experiential thing. Like, you have to go through the process and experience the process to really understand what it's about. I mean, it can be confusing until they open their minds to the reality of physical immortality. This one's interesting. Most Western scholars have trouble dating Patriji and other immortals because there's so much evidence for their existence in different centuries that they feel there must be mistakes somewhere. Looking for faults, right? That feeds into that talking shit thing of like, no way can this person really be whatever, it must be this whatever something, and then like looking for the faults, looking for the confirmation bias to somehow affirm or confirm these ideologies or belief systems they have about another person, again to deflect responsibility and accountability to avoid having to do the work. And it can be confusing going through this whole process because, like, learning to look beyond illusions and getting through things, or like things just aren't what they seem to be. You know, those roses have been painted red. But not every garden of red roses are mistakes. And like the Alice in Wonderland, the red roses, right? Like the mistake was the cards. Look to the color symbolism in this too. The cards planted a bunch of white roses. White symbolizing purity. And they're like, oh no, we got white roses. The queen only wants red roses. What does red represent? Materialism, power, lust, hunger, blood. Right, and be impassioned, it can be antagonizing, but it's not pure. It's root chakra. It's right at the base, right? And then what's at the root chakra and what's at the base? The anus. What comes out of the anus? Shit. Okay? And it's just like, oh no, we have to cover up the purity and we have to cover up the innocence and we have to disguise it with all this shit to make it look like it's something that it's not, to please or appease somebody who's a tyrannical dictator who doesn't have our best interest in heart, who just wants to control everybody for their own benefit and the gain. Not every garden is like that. Some of them just have roses of every color planted, or if somebody planted white roses, great, no big deal. Let's have white roses this year. You know, but it's just like looking for the mistakes. Oh no, somebody must have messed up somewhere. These aren't whatever, you know, they start digging and digging and digging and, you know, you start looking into the shit and start siphoning through all the shit. What are you going to find on the other side of it? Purity. So what are you spending all your time trying to slough through all of this shit and getting your hands dirty and stinking stuff up when you can just acknowledge it for what it is? Without judgment. Bertrucci started out as king, but he has no interest in fame or fortune. He has the greatest riches and power imaginable. It's like the control over his consciousness and his life force, right? It's not about the material things, it's the spirit. He has infinite spiritual riches in the kingdom of God. His actual powers are far, far beyond science fiction and beyond your imagination. You know? Okay. Change the vibration and the frequency. Okay, so it alluded it to her earlier in the reading, and I thought about it before the reading, so I'll just talk about it now before I close it off, because I think it's kind of ironic, and I think it's kind of interesting that last night I made a choice about energetics. And I made 2 purchases. 1 a beer and 1 a pack of cigarettes. But not for the reasons you might think. This, being at a, say, a financially limited space at the moment, is a very conscious investment into energy related to my personal transformation, where I'm at in life, and what I'm doing. So the first was a statement of, okay, I can make decisions to invest in something that's going to adjust my attitude or change my attitude. And I'm not condoning this in any way. Smoking and drinking are bad, don't do it. Avoid it at all possibilities if you can. These are toxins to our natural system, and yet we've made them legal and accessible to humans, so they have these coping tools that they can fall into and distract themselves with, so they don't have to address their truths. And so the first one for me was like a homage to a past self. Okay, we're going to ceremoniously recognize, this is very, very intrinsic, very personal to self. As far as function, I'm not going to say motivation, but let's say function. And in this ceremonious sequence with myself, there is a recoding or reprocessing of what is the function of this. People tend to fall into substances in order to avoid feeling things, right? To give themselves a sense of control. This is an acknowledgement to how far I've come and to where I want to go, and a very pivotal marking point. The second one, I had to really think about, because I don't want them. I don't need them. I sat in the parking lot there for a while, and I was like, okay, again, what is the function? We're readjusting the function of this behavior, and I'm coming up on, or, I've hit 20 years since I first smoked a cigarette. First time I was 17, and I remember that moment exactly of, it's just like, I had something incredibly tragic happen. Tragic and traumatic, and had nowhere to go, nobody to talk to, nobody cared that this horrible thing had fucking happened to me. And I just remember in this moment of thinking, fuck, nobody's ever gonna care. Nobody's ever gonna do anything about it. Nobody's ever gonna stand up for me in this situation. And there was this, it's a dual function. There's like a masking, a relief, a falling into something of like, if I can't have control over what happened to me, I can have a false sense of control with this intake. It just made me so sick. It makes me sick thinking about it. For years, decades, right? And I've done this with this intention of, I'm going to do this for 10 years, and after 10 years I'm going to stop. And it's been 20, within that 20 years, there have definitely been gaps and time periods where I haven't. So probably all in all together, it's been about 10 years. So it's time to stop, because I've made that commitment to myself, and I made that promise to myself. And so last night, again, in adjusting the function of this thing, the dual side of this. So there's that, like, well, fuck, I just need something to control or whatever, just have some sense of control over my visceral affect. The other side of that comes out of the shamanic practices. In Native American traditions, tobacco is honored as a sacred ceremonial entity. It has a purpose, it has a reason for being, it's got its medicinal aspects and its medicinal purposes, and should be approached with respect, care, and should be, I would say, administered from a space of rite of passage, right? Like, you can't administer psych meds if you're not a psychiatrist or a doctor. I mean, medicine in any form, right? And so this one is similar, where the function of it is becoming something very different. And again, a reminder of, in this transformation process, in this transforming process of who I've been, where I've come from, and where I want to go, and who I want to be, and what I need to do to stand in that power, in that clearing, and what, like, habits and routines are coming to mind, but it's even deeper than that. It's more of a energetic boundary thing. It has something to do with being empowered, stepping in power, regaining my power, calling my power back to me, no longer giving my power away. Self-control and control of the mind. And nicotine's interesting. It's an interesting one, just as far as cultivating consciousness and what that looks like. This might be able to be related to any other sort of like addictive behavior or something, or like dissociating behavior. Let's call it that. Something to like check out and dismiss and not have to like. Sometimes it's too much. Sometimes with tragedy and trauma and horrible, awful things, if you don't have the tools or the supportive environment to navigate that in a healthy way, give me a moment. I'm gonna kind of clear some of this out because we're tapping into some really sensitive stuff here that this is not really the appropriate container, and I don't really have the time and space to go into it right now. But there's a point here when it comes to that talking shit thing, right? And regaining your power and speaking in truth and doing the work and doing the self. You know, these are items that now get to sit on my altar. They get to represent something very, very differently, because the tools and the things that I've been able to acquire since then and what has come out of that have been incredibly helpful. The biggest tool, the biggest helpful thing out of that is breath. The breath in the body and breath work. So I don't know, I guess with that being said, I've got my next task to meditate on, and my next point to reflect on. Like a big part of these readings and you coming along with this is coming along with my own transformation journey, my own personal experience. And although I don't make this space about me or personal stuff or anything that's going on in my life, what comes up for me in this are the tools and the lessons that I've learned along the way, like the message that comes from my mess. And I think that's beautiful, and I think that's amazing, and I think that anything's kind of possible when it comes to recovering yourself and regaining your power and getting into this space. Fuck, if I can do it, you can do it. And I feel like maybe I've been making it look too easy. Or something. Because it's been hard, and I don't really talk about the hard parts of it, because I don't want people to think I'm talking shit. Or being negative, or whatever. So I'm careful about how I go about this and how I approach this, because this is important. Speaking truth is important. Breaking out of these destructive cycles is important, and people need this. I needed this. I needed this years ago. I didn't have it. I had to find it. I've done all of our shitty work for you, so you don't have to. I mean, it can lead you to the water, but you gotta drink the water. I can't drink it for you, you know? Just a moment of peace and time to reflect. We can take all that funk and that chaos and that whatever, and we can leave it in this container. We can allow it to do its thing. Right? We're catalyzing a lot of energy here to go forward. And personally, this whole part about goals is really standing out to me. And I had that conversation last night. And for me, goals have always been really important. Long-term goals have always been really important. And my longest term goal for the longest time was get that PhD. And then I got accepted into the program, and I became a PhD student, and then life had other plans in mind for me, and I'm trying to work through that one, right? Technically, I reached my goal. I proved to myself that I can be a PhD student. That's fine. And I know with the success history that I've had through academia, had I had been able to go through the program without being financially wrecked by forces outside of my control, I could have had that. I would have been that now. This year probably, I think, would have been this year, last year, somewhere around about this time would have been the presentation of my dissertation. And part of me is playing that out in my head and kind of living in this fantasy delulu world of yay, I achieved my goals, and then I open my eyes and the reality of the situation is much different. And so restructuring those goals and restructuring those long-term goals has been pretty challenging. It's just like every time I've been able to set that goal marker, set that whatever, have this whatever, something comes along and moves it, or things are becoming kind of unattainable. So I'm going into this conceptual space of, okay, well, what's the goal? There aren't really words that I have for it. It's a feeling, right? It's an inner knowing and a vision that I have of myself, for my son, for my family. So thank you for being in here in this space where I work on defining that and clarifying that and what that looks like. The transformation guide has a lot to do with it and what that looks like. And so, yeah. Okay, I'm done. I'm done here today. Thank you. No, if you do need a reading or something like that, please reach out. We can do stuff remote. I can come to you. type up something for you if you want, help you through whatever it is that you're working through. We can do cards, we can not do cards, but sometimes having that consultant or that guidance to get you through this or to help you transform is really important. We're a gregarious species, and as much as we want to be alone and do everything on our own, it's important for us to connect with other people in healthy ways, right? And not these shit-talking, whatever, divisive ways.